joining this morning, but I want to make sure we have enough time for the full plan discussion. So I'll just go ahead and kick it off, and then I'll turn it over to Viviana. I think I know most everyone on the call, but just briefly, my name is Lisa Marsh, and I'm at Dartmouth College, and I head up the Northeast node of NIDA's Clinical Trials Network, and have the opportunity to serve as one of the co-facilitators of this youth special interest group of the Clinical Trials Network. And I just want to briefly orient us to today's meeting. So Dr. Viviana Horigian, as many of you know, is a professor in public health at the University of Miami. And she's also executive director the Florida Node Alliance of the National Drug Abuse Treatment Clinical Trials Network, which is housed at the University of Miami. And she's focused much of her research career on creating local capacities that would allow for implementation of multi-site randomized clinical trials in real-world settings, and with the final goal of improving clinical practice. And as many of you, I recognize many of you were at the meeting that we had of our youth special interest group in March of this year, when she joined us and basically to receive feedback on a research study proposal that she and some colleagues were crafting to hold focus groups with adolescents and young adult females in the US to assess mental health concerns and to understand how we might best understand and address these concerns. So today, she and her team are back, which is very exciting, to present the background, the approach, the preliminary results that they found in some of this work, sharing some of the lessons learned, and then ideally have another discussion with this group to seek input from this youth special interest group on informing next steps in this line of work. So Viviana, thank you for coming back and circling back after you've embarked on this line of research, and really excited to hear what you've been doing and learning and having a discussion with this group. So I'll just turn it over to you.
Yes, so thank you so very much. And I'm so excited to see most of this team that joined us back here. I am here together with Renee Schmidt and Sofia Gonzalez, who are part of my team. And I feel that I was really concerned by a problem and had this, questions, and I brought it here to this group, to the YSIG. You helped me all craft what could be potential questions for these focus groups, but Renee and Sophia carried out the work, and hopefully we can think on what to do next together. So I'm gonna cover a little bit of, for those that were not here, or March was too far away to remember what is it that the public health problem is, and the background about on this work. And I'll turn it on to Sophie to cover the approach, and then we'll go back to preliminary results. And I would like really to have ample time for discussions and next steps. So what really concerned me and many moms that I get to talk to, I am a mom of 2 teenagers, but also as a scientist, as a clinician, is really the alarming increase in the prevalence of mental health problems in young girls. And everything from the sadness to the loneliness to the connectedness to the use of social media and its implications from a mental health perspective to substance abuse. And the concern was really not mine as a mom, but was really reflected by the CDC on the increase in sadness and violence, and also on hopelessness that our girls are experiencing, but had been really documented throughout the media and through newspapers, and these are just some of those screenshots of the concern that we were picking up on. And most importantly, what we really were battling with is, are we really understanding what's going on? Do we understand it well? Do we know how to ask about what's going on, and who should be asking, and how should we be asking? And At that moment, there was an opportunity back in March to apply for for a departmental grant, which we were able to obtain. And in the grant, we had written that we would really seek expert guidance on creating those questions for teen girls with parents and young adult women, because we were concerned about those two age groups. And then host focus groups to build an understanding of the issues, and then how to best capture them, assess them, and eventually use those findings to inform the development of assessments or interventions. So it was thanks to this group that we got to these questions. I don't know if you recall, the first ones were, okay, what are the problems? Can they characterize the problems among young females of that age? And what do you think is causing those health problems? And so the first two questions were gaining more insight on the problem. And the second set of questions were understanding how to talk about it. So the question became, if you had a mental health concern, who would you talk about it, and what's a platform that you feel most comfortable sharing? And what kind of questions would you want someone to ask if you wanted to see how you're doing? And this came because of an assumption that maybe we're not asking the right way. And that's how that question ended in that domain. And then the last set of questions is seeking perspective on what would help. And the question became, if you had a mental health problem, what type of help would you like, and what would be helpful in general in regard to mental health problems for young females? So these questions emerged from the YSIG. We streamlined them in sets of 2. And then I'm going to turn it to Sophie to describe how is it that we launched the focus groups. And Sophie, take it away, and then back to results.
Okay, so as previously mentioned, we got some great feedback from the YSIG. And so based on this feedback, we were informed on asynchronous focus groups into a study. We were directed to a study that used a platform called discourse.org to have these focus groups. So after learning about this study, we decided to conduct asynchronous focus groups with 2 groups, a young adults 18 to 25 years old, and a separate group with teens ages 12 to 17 with their parents. In order to recruit the young adult group, we distributed electronic flyers via a social media campaign on Meta. You can see an example of the flyer in the image on the right. If potential participants were interested in learning more, they could go to the link on the electronic flyer and fill out a pre-survey, which had information on the study, a consent form, some basic personal information, as well as some questions regarding their mental health. Once we received about a threshold of about 60 potential participants, we closed the pre-survey, and all potential participants that completed the survey were sent a copy of their consent form and were emailed with information on how to register for the boards. We did use a slightly different approach to recruit participants for the teen groups, but we'll leave that for later on in the presentation. So the focus groups were held over the course of 3 days, where participants were asked to respond to the daily prompts and to 2 peer posts each day. And they were compensated with a $20 Amazon gift card for each day that they participated in this study. And at the end of the 3 days, participants were asked to complete a participant satisfaction survey and were given a list of mental health resources in addition to their incentive. As for next steps in our approach, we want to share some of the results of our quantitative surveys, as well as some of the results from the qualitative analysis that's guided by Dr. St. George, who I believe is on the call. Renee and I are currently in the process of going through the transcripts, and we've used a process of consensus to come up with some codes and are now putting them in vivo to be able to go through the transcripts in the software. We can go to the next slide.
God, I'm going backwards.
Oh, okay, so this is actually a little screenshot of what discourse looks like. This is where the participants would respond to their posts and respond to their peers. And we wanted to highlight some of the benefits of using a platform like this. It's very convenient for the participants. They're able to log on whenever it's most convenient for them. They were also allowed to remain anonymous. We gave them anonymous usernames. As you can see, we've removed all identifiable information from their usernames. It's user-friendly and very accessible. They could access it through their phone or computer or an iPad. And we also added a welcome video, some community guidelines, and a tutorial video to help orient the participants to the boards, and as well as promote a sense of community on the board and show them that we were there to support them. And I think we can go to the next slide.
Okay, so Sophie went on the recruitment strategy for the young adults. So what I'm going to present right now are the results on the young adult females from 18 to 25 years old. So we were able to stop recruiting at 52 and organize the 52 young females into 4 concurrent online asynchronous groups with 13 members each. So for the most part, the young females identified themselves as cisgender, while one identified as genderqueer, and one preferred not to answer. About 70% were heterosexual, 19 bisexual, and there were some lesbians in the group, and in terms of race ethnicity, we had 46% white, 34% Black and African American. There were some representation, very small, of Asian. And in terms of ethnicity, a big representation on non-Hispanic, but we were able to have about 9% of Hispanic girls. And the map here shows, and I think it was one of the concerns we discussed at that moment, is where do you want to capitalize? Where do you want to really focus on? And we, at that moment, wanted just to be broad. And we were, through social media, able to attract participants from 19 states. But there is some lack of representation in the Midwest as compared to other states. I'm going to move this. I wanted to show a little bit of the demographic characteristics in the prior slides, but as Sophie mentioned, we characterized the population prior engaging in the online focus 3-day discussion on metrics of mental health. So we assessed generalized anxiety disorder with the GAD, and we assessed depression with the PHQ-9. And you see that some of the responders were at the severe or moderate level of anxiety, and we have a wide distribution on levels of depression. Because some prior work of our group has been very much worried about social connectedness and loneliness, we really wanted to assess also social connectedness using the social connectedness scale. And in out of 90 possible points in a 5-point Likert scale, the mean was a 49.6 in this group. So we were also worried about social media use as part of the concern coming into the study. And at that first survey, prior engaging to the focus groups, we asked about social media addiction. We pulled 2 items that I would like you to take a look at on, I use social media in order to forget about personal problems, and the high percentage, above 60%, are saying very often or often they use social media to forget about personal problems, and above 50% say that they feel an urge to use social media more and more, very often and often. And that we use the Bergen social media addiction scale to measure this. So it was thanks to Sarah, who's here as part of our team, Dr. St. George, that I got in contact with Dr. Miller. I'm not sure if you know her work on spirituality and the awakened brain in teens and adolescents, and I devoured 2 of her books, and I thought, like, her studies show how much the lack of spirituality are related to hopelessness, loneliness, and mental health problems in young adults, particularly females. So I thought we would better characterize this population as well. And we took 2 items of a spirituality scale. I think that young females are struggling in finding meaning in their lives. And you see there again above 50% saying strongly agree or agree. And I think that girls of my age are struggling in finding a connection to all things. Again, more than 50% strongly agreeing or agreeing. So we also, this group suggested that we find out on, are the young adults or the females being asked? What if they're not being asked? So we asked, are you being asked about your mental health? And 90.38% of the young adults said that, yes, they are being asked. Now, what are they being asked? That was another recommendation that came from the group. And they mostly are being asked about depression, 63%, about anxiety, 73%, and less about substance use, cannabis, 15%, tobacco, 12%, and alcohol, 21%. So this is for the record. They are not being asked about the substance abuse so much as we hope they would. So we ask also about frequency. How frequent are you being asked? And 46.8 participants said that they were being asked more than once a month, and 23% about once a month, and 17% just once every 6 months. And the reason why we asked this is because we were concerned that maybe, if we're relying on primary care screeners to identify these individuals, maybe we are missing the mark on who should be asking. And other participants responded once a year or less than once a year. But who are they being asked on their mental health? By whom? And most participants, 63%, stated that their parents are the ones asking on their mental health. But others responded on their family members or friends, a high percentage also. Doctors were just 32.6%, and we didn't specify primary care or any other doctor. Coaches, 1.9%, teachers, 11.5%, and counselors, 30.7%. Most participants stated that they could be completely honest with a counselor. So we asked about the degree of honesty, from completely honest to not at all. And most honesty, completely honest, came with counselors, with 36.5% said that they could be completely honest with a doctor, and 34.6% with a friend, 15.3% with a parent, and 11.5% with a family members. So 38.4% participants stated that they could be mostly honest with their parents, and 42.3% stated that they could be mostly honest with a friend. Then Renee and Sophie took a deep dive a little bit further and said, like, okay, how are these individuals or the reporters that are expressing severe anxiety or severe depression reporting their honesty? And no one with severe anxiety indicated that they could be completely honest with their parent, but 3 said they could be completely honest with a friend, 34% with a doctor, and 65% with a counselor. So those among those with severe depression, no one said they could be completely honest with their parents, and while 21% said that they could be completely honest with their doctor, no one is asked by their doctor. So now what follows next is the slides summarizing. As Sophie explained, that we have not Sophie and Renee started building the code book and are into putting all this data into NVivo. But this is the themes that came, or the topics that emerged at first pass and thorough read of this 3 days focus groups. So when asked about mental health problems, many mental health problems were named, but primarily what was most prominent were mood disorders, anxiety disorders. We heard about substance use, but we also heard about low self-esteem, loneliness, and lack of connectedness, adverse experiences, trauma, and how these problems interfere in the everyday life. And that was interesting. I'm not sure if we shared so far that one of the things that we did during these 3 consecutive days is that we opened the online asynchronous discussion board at 9 a.m. in the morning. But Sophie, Renee, and myself met around 12 or 1 every day, and at the close of day, to read while Sophie and Renee were really actively monitoring the chat to approve every post that was placed online, to approve them for safety and other reasons. So so we met, so if there was any problem, they would notify me, but as they were monitoring. But when we met, we reflected on what we were seeing, the discussion, the discussion theme, or what was generating conversation, or what needed more clarification. And at those moments, we posted back maybe messages of validation to continue and stimulate participants continuing the discussion. And in a couple of occasions, we have asked for further detailing of what the conversation was that was being held. So I have to say that it was an interesting journey also for the 3 of us, because those sessions that were planned for maybe for a brief touch-up point ended up being just an hour and a half, and I wish we had a study on that study, but we didn't. So these are some quotes that we were able to capture. These are some of the posts that came when asking about, what are the main mental health concerns of girls of your age. And you can see depression, anxiety, ADHD, substance abuse and addiction. Loneliness is a huge issue. There was references to dating apps and the gap on really meeting their needs. And then there's also a trauma in the last quote, as you can see. So what is causing the problems? And again, this is the entire qualitative analysis has not been completed, yes, but this is what the conversation brought about, and is our young females are worried about the state of the world and the future. A lot of conversation about social media being the one to blame and the negative consequences of social media. There was also, the challenge of the lack of awareness about mental health problems or education, as well of, stigmatization or being judged if you talk about them. When talking about social media, that also led to the conversation of the social expectations and how social media creates standards that are very difficult to achieve, and how that pressure becomes problematic. And then some concern about getting the right diagnosis and the right care. But what you see here in the center of this slide is intentional, because one or two boards really, what dominated the conversation was what it means to be a young woman now. And so the female experience of these young girls is what was concerning, or what could be creating some of the stress. So there was references to misogyny, sexism, what is the expected role of a woman, how we're going backwards in terms of human rights, and then some conversation about hormones and puberty. So this is some of those quotes, and social media has caused a lot of the issues on this front, and we are constantly comparing ourselves to other women, and we can feel like there is something wrong with us if we don't appear a certain way to others. Misogyny is definitely a large issue for me personally. I experience extreme paranoia and anxiety around men due to past experiences. It really sucks to feel unsafe at school or work because of misogyny or sexism. With the influx of social media and the ability to have access to some of the most disturbing news, like school shootings or environmental concerns, and being bombarded by it all, it makes it extremely difficult to keep a level of sanity and to see the good that'll come in the future. So who, when, how, and where to talk about it? So who should be asking, where and how, with whom? So what we learned about this is that context matters. And when I mean context is not so much, if you're in school, at home, or somewhere else. It means the context in which the conversation emerges, with the importance of not being judged, feeling judged, with the need and the importance of really feeling supported while we're talking about this. Feeling that there's important and genuine questions and interest in the person that's asking, and being able to trust the other person is very important. There was some conversation about accessible location, but what we saw in these boards is how important it is just to ask and to listen, being heard. And these are some quotes as on the importance of that. What I got while I was reading is the importance of that holding environment as you are asking, rather than I need to run through these questions to make sure that I know what's going on with you, or what's, this is expected from me to do at this moment. So I will leave that for couple of seconds so you read it. And I'm quite boring by reading the statements myself. So I'm going to go to the next line. So, okay, so what could help? So I'm not sure as scientists we will be probably able to deconstruct the expectations and shift the culture that we are experiencing. Probably some advocacy could help on that, but it will take probably maybe decades. Mental health should be easier to access. The issue of stigma and destigmatization around, and education around mental health. Talking to clinicians. There was a lot of how important it is to, to take care of one another, and the role of self-care. There was a comment that got some participants going about, maybe we should engage on a social media detox. And, and being able to speak to others about mental health helps. And these are some of the quotes. So stigma in the first one, support, some. And then the last quote got us thinking as we were reading with Renee and Sophie, that that there was some, beyond what was said, the process that unfolded of connection between these participants was interesting. How they knew we were reading, approving, and responding if needed, but we were kind of like distanced, but they felt they had a place where to go and feel supported. And you'll see some of this coming up in what Renee's gonna present right now. So take it away, Renee.
Yeah, so as Sophia mentioned, at the final part of our approach, after the girls completed, or the young females completed the 3 days of participating, we wanted to capture a brief satisfaction survey. And this was really for our team, as we have never conducted these asynchronous online focus groups. We just wanted to understand their satisfaction and what they felt were some of the strengths and weaknesses with participating. So you can see here on this Likert scale, almost everyone said that they somewhat or extremely were satisfied with their participation on the asynchronous focus group boards. And you can go to the next slide. And then we had 2 open text boxes to ask them what they thought were the strengths of these boards and the weaknesses. So we've summarized the strengths here as the ability to share anonymously, the ease and temporal and geographic accessibility of participation, the open-ended nature of the prompts to share their perspectives, and this dedicated safe space, as Viviana mentioned, to discuss mental health among their peers. And so some of the quotes here are, being introverted and feeling like I often get talked over in synchronous focus groups, I felt like I could truly express my opinions and thoughts regarding women's mental health in this kind of setting. There wasn't pressure to jump in at a certain point or feel like I'm interrupting someone. I could jump in on any person's comment, whether it be to agree, give more input, or somewhat refute at any point in time. I thought that was valuable. It's also nice being able to look back on those responses and reflect personally and from a cultural standpoint. And someone else said, I feel that being online and anonymous, I somehow had confidence in leaving more personal comments without fear of being judged by an exterior facade. Also, the fact that having a window of hours to participate, I feel that it made it easier to motivate the participation of more women, adjusting to the flexibility of schedules. Another aspect is that online synchronous focus room where the comments followed a process of review and approval is that allowed to maintain an atmosphere of respect and honesty without violating the safety or opinion of others. And next, we summarized the weaknesses that they mentioned, which included that they could not tell the tone, mood, or nonverbal cues of fellow participants. There was limited engagement and less back and forth conversation and interaction with each other and the moderator. And they also noted the lack of real-time responses. So if girls joined earlier in the boards and posted, they had to wait until a little bit later in the day to see some of the replies to their comments or reply to other posts, while posts towards the end of the day were read by fewer people and maybe not appreciated as much as they should be. So some comments included, without real-time interaction, participants may not receive immediate feedback on their responses, which can limit their engagement in the discussion. Some comments, especially made later in the day, don't get recognized or responded to, even though they're very insightful. And without real-time interaction, moderators may not be able to probe deeper into participants' responses or ask for clarification in the same way as they would in a face-to-face setting. So this was very insightful for our team to understand how the participants really felt about their participation on these boards. And you can go to the next slide. So Viviana presented on the young adult cohort, and I'm going to discuss a little bit about as soon as we wrapped up with the 3 days and finalized paying the participants from the young adult group, we started recruiting for our teen and parent study. And this cohort, we created a separate IRB submission and did seek feedback from our IRB coordinators to understand how we could, pursuing an online recruitment strategy and an online study really verified that there was familiar relationship in order to get parental consent, and determine that there was a familiar relationship there and they met all the eligibility criteria. So we were instructed to not only post this flyer on social media, but to conduct then a brief video screening via Zoom with the families, just to ask a couple of questions and receive verbal affirmation of our eligibility criteria. So we initially started doing this and ran into an issue of having some doubts about the veracity of their geographic location, familial relationship, and really ability to navigate the English language in a way to be able to read and write and reflect on the discussion boards. So we modified our initial screener to include additional questions to probe a little bit deeper. So asking participants where they saw the post and sharing a little bit of their interest to participate as a parent and as a child, as a teen girl, and also to just state their city, state, and zip code of residence. And we also kind of shifted away from a social media recruitment because we saw that maybe social media was taking it to audiences that were not necessarily intended, but shifting to a more electronic flyer. We reached out to this group among other colleagues as well to help us kind of disseminate this and post it in places like libraries and community centers where it could be seen more in the United States and really like get at our intended audience. And with this, we were able to recruit 8 families. So 8 parents and 8 teens conducted video screenings with all of them, enrolled them into the study. And you can see here that some brief demographics of the families, and they were mostly moms who participated, and they were across 6 states. And you can go to the next slide. And similarly to the young adults, we also captured in the pre-survey then among enrolled participants a brief mental health assessment. So we took a look at, again, anxiety, depression, and social connectedness among our teens. And we see not as severe and alarming anxiety and depression as we did with young adults, but still notable, and a little bit higher social connectedness score as well. Next slide. So we similarly asked about social media use and social media addiction. We see a slightly lower social media addiction score among our teens, but similarly, we see that 2/3 were very often using social media to forget about their problems, and half felt an urge to use social media more and more. Next slide. And then regarding spirituality, we similarly see that 2/3 strongly agree that young females are struggling to find meaning in their lives. And almost everyone said agree or slightly agree that girls of my age are struggling to find connection to all things. Next slide. And then asking teens about mental health, we also characterized, how often and who was asking who they could be honest with. So all the 8 participants said that they had been asked about their mental health, most commonly about depression, anxiety, and ADHD. 5 of them were asked more or once a month, while 3 said they were asked more than once a month. And all of them said that their parents asked about their mental health, while others responded that friends, teachers, doctors, counselors, coaches, and minister, preacher, or priest also asked. 37% said that they could be completely honest with their parents, while 25% felt that they could be mostly honest, and 37% somewhat honest with their parents. And most participants, 62%, stated that they could be completely honest with their doctor when asked about mental health. And then following the participation, so as we are coding the young adult transcripts, we have not yet started to code the teen and parent transcripts yet. And we also want to kind of continue recruitment in this group, but just so we don't have any of those themes yet. But we did similarly capture their satisfaction in participating. And you can see that everyone said somewhat or extremely satisfied with their participation in the boards. And so now I'm going to hand the discussion off to Viviana, but I think the first point is really picking up off where we are recruiting these dyads. We're recruiting our parent and teen groups as we're able to conduct this enroll this one group of 8 families so far, but have since paused our recruitment again, just due to we continue to screen families, and we're continuing to have the same doubts of really geographic location, familial relationship, and the ability to navigate the English language. And have since met with our IRB coordinators to get their feedback as well on ways we could really verify and navigate conducting the recruitment and the study all online, and wonder what you all have, if you've experienced, have kind of pursued an approach like this as well, and how you maybe navigated that challenge. And I'll toss it to you, Viviana.
Yeah. So I'm gonna take, I like to see all the faces. I cannot see them when I'm in presenter mode. So yeah, I would like to stop a little bit on the on that point, on the recruitment. One of the things that Renee and Sophie noticed is that we were getting really participants that were not, we could not say that they had the relationship, parent and child, and they were not fluent in English. They seemed to have strong African accents. They said they were in the, maybe they were in California. It was 9 o'clock, but it was dark outside, or things that didn't make sense. And the threshold for failure to screen was really that what's needed to be able to participate is that you can communicate. But we were not sure about their relationship either. In our conversations with the specialist at the IRB said, had you tried without incentives? Because it seems that it's a tentative, is really tempting. The adolescent can earn $60, and parents can earn $60 if they participate the 3 days. And it crossed my mind, but I was like, if I'm not getting anyone with this, so who will sign up? And I would like to stay as farther away as possible from a sample of convenience. Otherwise I think I could go and ask other moms of teenagers and enroll them to be part of the study. But I'm stuck there. So we are stuck there on what do we do to get a better representation of, because it's just eight. I mean, not that the other one was such a large group either, but I think it is 4 different groups, 4 different conversations. It was interesting what came out of it. So I'm stuck, and I would love to hear some comments about that. And then what are our thoughts on the results of the young adult study?
Thank you all so much for sharing this. You've done a lot since March. It's great to see that, and particularly the sample size in the young adult study was great, and the diversity from so many states. Great. So why don't we just open it up, and there are lots of specific questions that have been posed to the group, and I know this group has a lot of expertise in this space, so please just jump in. There's some comments in the chat here as well.
No, I'm reading.
Lydia.
Yes.
Okay, Lydia has her hand raised.
Yes.
Lydia.
And
Okay.
then a shout out to Lydia, because we wouldn't have learned about the discourse.org platform if you had not shared that article back then in March. And it was beautiful. It was a learning experience for the 3 of us. It was wonderful. So thank you again.
I'm so excited it worked out, and I want to learn from you because I haven't actually done them, just my colleague has. And so I'm looking forward to hearing more about your procedures, and when you publish, learning more about what you did. So what I was going to say was not dissimilar to some of the comments in the chat about you kind of want some vetting of the parental-child relationship. if you had infinite dollars and time, you could figure it out. But the shortcut is to go through groups where that relationship is verified or established in some way. So the parenting groups on Facebook is one idea. Going through schools, primary care centers, blah, 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 places where people know that this is the parent of a child. Now, folks can still lie, sure, but it affects the representativeness. It's more difficult to recruit, but you've got to balance that against like how you're going to get these people in this known relationship. So thinking about dissemination networks where that relationship is established.
Yeah, so we thought about this, and actually I reached out to a teacher that has a network of teachers, so that could help, and that there's she's a mom herself of teenagers that could help recruit. We thought of the Girl Scouts as well, and we placed it on Facebook on their pages. I'm not sure about, so that's a phenomenal point, and I schools, I'm not sure I can get in the school. It's challenging. I mean, it takes a lot of time to develop the relationship and the way in. But Renee, did we post on parent groups in Facebook?
So we didn't post directly on the boards, but what we did was when we originally set up our social media campaign, which I think was very successful for the young adults, you're allowed to kind of curate your targeted audience. So the age ranges and even select tags of like parent or Girl Scouts or things like that. So that is what we did with the teen study, but I don't know why it didn't work. I mean, even if one person shares it outside of that kind of network, then it's lost. So we didn't post it directly on parental groups, but as you mentioned, we did reach out to the Girl Scouts to see what networks they would be able to share it with there. So I think searching for other groups and really seeking their permission. Most of those are closed groups, so you wouldn't be able to just go post it, but seek permission to post it in those forums could be our next steps. Yeah.
We have a lot of comments in the chat, but Dave's got his hand raised, so why don't we go to Dave first?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't really, I'm not too worried about, trying to get them from different areas, like the 4-H club, the Girl Scouts, so that you're getting kind of a swath of America, with different ethnic, urban, rural, because what I see you as doing is that, like, maybe I'm wrong about this, but it seems like you're almost like you're doing this to generate hypotheses to find new approaches. It's not like we really need the very strict epidemiologic rigor of, this is the exact percentage of people who think X and Y. I mean, am I wrong about that?
No, you're right. We didn't use it, not even a sampling strategy, but we wanted to be as general as possible and mitigate as much as convenience. So going back to your comment, Lydia, is like, I am not familiar with specific parenting groups in Facebook. What would those be? Are there like, maybe I should join one, but I don't know how to search them. I'll do some finding, or if there are some that are more trustworthy than others. Like I don't know. Dave, I see your hand up again.
Sorry. I'm actually having trouble lowering it, but it's not only Facebook, there are parent groups, but also like things like Reddit and yeah, not just Girl Scouts, also 4-H, and looking at different churches and maybe community organizations. I think you could probably going for 5 or 6 different convenient samples might end up getting something that looks a little like America.
Oh, okay, that's helpful. So I see Kerr suggested maybe not advertising the reimbursement, but make participants aware once it's been vetted. In the past, I think the RB required that I communicate if there's gonna be compensation or reimbursement. I wonder if I can do that. That's a great idea. And see what happens.
Well, thank you a lot, Viviana. It's really nice to have you come back to us and tell us what you have found after you sort of sought input from us. So that was really very nice to have you again. And you're probably, you'll win the frequent presenter award at this YSIG. No one has come close to doing 2 in a year. So congratulations. So I'm just thinking, I think it's very nice that you're focusing on girls, but it just raises the question, by all means, we need some gender-tailored interventions and understanding of what's going on, but makes me wonder, there are some common stresses and problems and difficulties that are representative of that community. So it doesn't matter whether you're a boy or a girl, that you have those sort of things. And then within your family clusters, so I just don't know if it's worth for you to think about ways to kind of look at what are some of the commonalities that are just available just by virtue of being that age or living in that community, and then your families, etc. And then what is actually unique to being a girl.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I was having an informal conversation with a colleague, and he says, "But why you were so worried about the girls?" I'm worried about the boys too. And I'm like, okay, so and what could be common that it's really affecting across genders? Definitely because yes, and don't forget the dads. Yes. One of the things that triggered this was really the high prevalence or the spike that has been reported in this group, and I was okay. Is there something specific to girls? But what I'm hearing you saying is, if I understood you right, are there other risk factors or other determinants that are cutting across? That even if we go to intervention development, might be more important to consider this this way. Okay, so I have Dave's comment. I'm really impressed by the young adult data. I agree with Geetha. Also, relationships between the sexes are going to be experimented differently by each sex, but they might represent some social breakdown and difficulty with meaning finding in a post-traditional society. Yeah, men's mental health may be masked by a retreat into weed, porn, and video games. Yes. So that brings me, why is it that I ask about spirituality? And Dr. Miller's work is not just focused on girls, or is focused on all adolescents and young adults. And I'm reacting to the comment on, finding, with difficult with meaning and meaning finding. And that was one of the questions, and her work really stresses the lack of feeling that you're part of something bigger than yourself, in addition to finding meaning in your own life. So that could be something that it's cutting across, as you will say, Dave. I was thinking that, and I with this, I'm going to transition. I see there's 4 minutes left of this brain trust. I want to transition on like what we have learned so far, and I know that these are preliminary results, but when we were implementing the groups, I had the sense of, wow, it seems that it's helping for these girls to talk to each other about this in this context. Maybe it was my interpretation. Of course, there's no emotion there. I cannot, you know, temperature that, or I don't know if that's the case, but some of the responsiveness to each other seem to be of support, of encouragement, and so much so that I asked Sophie, are there any of these groups or chats going on? You have to see that we represent 3 different generations. Myself, Renee, and Sophie. Sophie's closer to the responders that I am, but they are, but they're not this way. That's what I learned, is that there's not like someone is monitoring, or you don't know who joins. There's not a vetting on who joins. It could digress with something different. So there's less of a monitoring on it. I don't know if you want to expand on what it is out there. Maybe I don't know the existence of others, but I wonder, is this something that helped at all, or not? And what I want to hear is what would you recommend as next steps?
Lauren, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to kind of comment on like that I think that starting with like women's mental health is still an important like starting point. I think because the female experience that was kind of talked about is so dynamic and vastly different, not just like the generalized female experience, but also if you cut into like sociological stratifications of like, what's your socioeconomic class, what's your race, like the white woman's experience is vastly different than the experience of a woman of color, of the experience of a woman in like a lower socioeconomic class, or somebody who's in poverty. And I think also like talking about some, and like I don't know a lot about this study. This is my first time in this group. I just like randomly found it. But I think to like because I'm in social work and I see a lot of the different ways that like women are stratified through like their experiences. So I think representation is really important. And I think like a little bit, I'm also kind of like curious about like the language barrier. I wasn't sure if you could like expand a little bit more on that, because I'm kind of curious, like maybe like where that's coming from, like what different sorry, that's my alarm. What like different groups are experiencing some of like that English language barrier, because I think that's important too. Like how is like women who have like struggle with communicating through language, like there's also going to be a barrier there about like their experience.
Okay.
So Viviana, thank you, Lauren, so much for those comments. I just wanted to note the time. I know some people are dropping off since we're at the top of the hour. Question about if folks can get the slides is one question. Emily asked that. And then also Dave has some specific suggestions about next steps in the chat there about presenting what you're learning. I know you're still doing, some data capture and you present preliminary data here, but perhaps there might be opportunity to present in some of the outlets he's recommended as well.
Yeah, so definitely we can share slides. I just want to just say that this has not been published, and we have published, and we hope to just finalize our qualitative analysis. But thank you so much. very
Thank you
delicious.
for sharing this. And also, I know that these are such rich data, but I know you said that you're still collecting some data, and this is preliminary. So if you want to come back to us again, feel free. I know Geetha said twice in 1 year so far, but we can make it 3 times, or we could do it next year. But I think it's a really important discussion, and there's so much, to do. So if you want to continue this dialogue, we surely can find the time for that. And more suggestions in the chat if you want to grab some of those suggestions there from Dave.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you all so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you. All right. Take care. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.